Each time I was injured and they came up to treat me, I refused treatment. I refused treatment because I re-verified with them that my mother would get notice, and I was afraid it would kill her.
Hey, got something really cool I wanted to run by and let you know what's going on. So I'm starting a group that will start taking a deep dive into each one of these episodes. So we'll collectively come together and talk about the shows, talk about the guests. I'll be bringing back some of the guests to do some Q&A sessions and really take a further dive into their story, their journey, the episode, talk about, maybe some of the things you wish I would have asked on the episodes, do some Q&A sessions and the like. As a friend put it to me, it's really like a book club, but for the podcast. So a couple times a week, we'll go in, we'll break down the favorite shows of the week, and have cool discussions around everything that we've heard, we've learned, and want to know about their journey. Some of these guests will come in and they'll teach part of, what makes them awesome at what they do. And then, as always, I'll be providing regular value and content in this group. It's really cool because this only is going to cost $5 a month to join this group. And you'll be able to come in, interact with everybody else in there. So I'll put a link right in the show notes for this that you can jump in, come have a conversation with us, and we will really deep dive into each one of these episodes and help us all rise up together. Thanks for tuning in, guys. It's going to be a great show today. Having the show wasn't something I started out to do. But the day I found out somebody wanted to really sponsor the show was a really, really cool experience. So, guys, I want you to take some time to go check out Point Blank Safety Services and their new nonprofit, Blue Family Fund. These guys are doing some really, really cool things. And Stacy McGovern, who's the CEO over there, has been a dear friend, and she was a guest on the show. But these guys are literally taking, the off-duty officers and putting them out in security guard role. And here's what's cool about it is, as they're protecting our lives, they don't make a whole lot of money in that regard. No first responders are paid for the value they provide for our safety and our health and taking care of us. So these guys, Stacy and her team over at Point Blank Safety Services have really found a cool way to give back to these officers by helping them provide an additional income so they can continue to support and protect us. So do me a favor, guys. Seriously, go check out pointblanksafety.com and then go look at their nonprofit, which is Blue Family Fund. Now, this nonprofit was created because of the success of Point Blank Safety Services. They wanted to give back to the families of fallen officers and be able to give scholarships away to the families of current, police officers. So do me a favor. It would mean the world to me if you would go out and help support this show by supporting Point Blank Safety Services and their nonprofit Blue Family Fund. Just tell them Donnie has sent you. You heard it on Donnie's Success Champions, and Stacy will take a tremendous and amazing care of you. Thanks, guys. All right, guys, strap it in. This is going to be a hell of an episode. So I'm bringing on John Nastav, and he's a 72-year-old guy that's got just one hell of a story. So I will forewarn you, we're going to talk heavily about the Vietnam War and go into a lot of detail on there. We're going to talk about his journey while he was in. We're going to talk about the hell in the fight he's had afterwards. And you're going to hear us talk a lot about his book in this episode. And I don't usually promote the books in this episode, but he's got a really big fight on his hand, and I want to make sure we can help him out as much as possible. So enjoy this episode, guys, but I will tell you, it's going to get into it. All right, guys, so it's going to be a really, really fun episode. I'm bringing a new friend on today, and it's John Nastav, and he's got a really, really cool story and an even better mission, what he's trying to do and accomplish in life. So, John, my friend, welcome to the show. Please tell us your journey.
All right. Thank you for having me. Thank you for your listeners for taking the time to listen. I am a 72-year-old Vietnam vet, served multiple tours in Vietnam, served there during 66, 67, and 68. I was all over the country, basically choppered in and out of everywhere I went. And I wrote a book because I needed to get a message out, as I unfortunately had to go through a lot of psychiatric care as I got older, even from when I first started. But as I got older, as they explained to me, the memories from war come out because you're controlling your life and raising your family now fade away. So the older vets are really dealing with a lot of the PTSD, trauma from that. And the Vietnam vets also deal with Agent Orange cancers. I wrote the story because I, for 10 years solid, was required to see psychs and a trauma specialist, or they were going to lock me up, as they stated, for my care. They said it, and for safety of others. I didn't. I went along, and anyway, the trauma specialist I was required to see, after years and years of trying to pull stories out about my past in Vietnam, felt I needed to put this in writing because my family needed to know my story, and he felt even people all the way around the world needed to hear this story because he felt it was special in his mind. And I'm quoting him. His name is Rob Smith. His name's brought up in my book, and I thank him again.
Let's start here, bud, because this is a huge story. Let me tell you why this story is. I'm so glad I get to be part of sharing your journey. So in January, I lost my father-in-law. Now, my father-in-law was a tunnel rat in Vietnam. He was also a tanker. He, similar to, I'm assuming, your story, had colon cancer, complete colonoscopy, a major heart attack with 4-way bypasses, and lived a miserable last 6 months of his life, 100% because of Agent Orange. And it was tragic to see him go through what he went through as part of that journey. And what sucks is, I'm a veteran myself, and watching these older veterans that defended our freaking rights in a shitty war suffer like they are now, things need and have to change for these guys. So walk me through it. How old were you when you went to Vietnam?
I had just turned 20 when I went to Vietnam.
Okay, so you were a little bit older. All right.
Yeah, spent my 21st, 22nd birthday there. I guess I got there mid of 66 and came home August, I believe it was 18th of 68. So that's across 3 tours, as we were quoted on how long the times were.
Wow.
So like your father-in-law, you stated, was father-in-law or father?
Father-in-law.
Father-in-law, tunnel rat, tanker, your job duties change daily. I'm a Marine, so we are given a job duty, what they call an MOS, but when you're in combat, every day you're a grunt, as they called it, your infantry. That is your main background. Then you go for your training. So once there, unless you're in a specific trade of transport or air, you're needed for what you're needed for on a daily basis, and you do what you have to do. So my book, I'm told, it's been 30 plus years since a vet wrote down some of his combat actual experiences. And I wrote that down, and I titled the book, In Thy Mother's Honor. And again, I don't want to give away the whole story. I'm hoping your audience would honor me and honor all the veterans that take the time to read this book. I'll go a little more into why the title. And I am authored as I Am Waiting. That is my pen name in the book. And again, later, towards the end of the book, I'm hoping everybody understands why I chose that pen name and why I even chose a pen name. But prior to my going to Vietnam, my mother was 8 months pregnant. Father died of a heart attack. My mother got the phone call, collapsed, fell on her belly, killed the baby. So 2 months later, I'm at the doorstep telling her in 4 days I'm leaving to go to Vietnam. She's telling me, you can't go. If I heard news you got hurt or killed, it would kill her. So thus, when I was over there, and as I learned actually being from combat around the other vets, wounded, killed around me, once you're treated there, a letter is written and someone shows up at the doorstep of the family, whether it's a wound or death. And I couldn't have that be on my mother. I promised her she would never hear that I was killed or hurt in Vietnam. So each time I was injured and they came up to treat me, I refused treatment. I refused treatment because I re-verified with them that my mother would get notice, and I was afraid it would kill her. So I literally morphined myself, taped myself, sewed myself, and all this is detailed in the book. And I don't want somebody to think I'm special. Many, many other veterans there did that. And maybe not for the same reason, but you just did what you had to do at the time to get back into combat. And the moment, the zone you're in at that time of an injury, at the time the round is fired and the battle is on, it is, there is nothing can be said. I couldn't explain it in any detail.
Wow.
It's just you do what you have to do at that moment, and it's all survival for you and the person at your side.
Wow.
So many, many veterans just popped the morphine, sewed themselves up, taped themselves up, and went on, and each for their own reason why they done it.
Right,
so
absolutely.
My book tries to detail these things, and when I come back home from Vietnam, and basically I only had a couple months left to go, and my mom, until she died years later, constantly told me, tell me what really happened to you. She could tell.
Yeah.
And all I would tell her is I stood there with my clothes on. You see no scars. I got both my arms. I got both my legs. So she never seen me without my clothes from that day on. The scars are there. Mentally, they're there.
Scars are there inside and out. I know my father-in-law, his mother, I believe, received 2 different letters that he had passed away in Vietnam. He was awarded Purple Hearts, one for being blown off the tank, and the other one was a bullet entry, but I don't remember when and where. But it was the longest time that everybody had thought that he had gone away. So the mere fact that you went through that hell and, one, self-medicated, which everybody was doing at that time, 2, stitching yourself up like a backyard mechanic, playing your own doctor, Navy corpsman, whatever, and hid that from your mom is just incredible. I mean, even when I did my 4 years, John, nobody knew a whole lot about what was going on during my time in or anything else. Were you writing letters home to your mom during this point?
Well, we don't have the internet like the wars today, and I take nothing away from any veteran in any place, any zone, any non-combat zone. But our letters, if you got one every 8-9 weeks, you're fortunate. You may get 2 or 3 bunched up because in my case, I was not stationed in a specific location. I was choppered in and out. So I would be 3 days in a drop zone, they call them LZs. I would be then 10 days somewhere else dropped in. And you're out there for whatever the mission was you were sent there. Whether you were looking, in this case, for the Viet Cong, you were told someone was there, you were setting up day ambushes, night ambushes, patrols. So I never had a home, so we had to be found. The group of us had to be found. So by the time they'd catch up with us, it was that long before we received a letter from anyone. And in turn, you may have wrote 1 or 2, and that's when you could send them out. I would say in my 3 tours there, I received 4 letters from my family, or 4 droppings. They may have been 3 or 4 letters at a time, and that's about as many as I sent out. No way to contact. It was just kept quiet.
Right. Well, and for lots of reasons, but I want to talk about that a little bit. And it's not, once you said it's not taken away from the guys, but it had to be a mental, tough-ass game to not only be in combat, but not have any clue what's going on in the rest of the world as you guys are defending our freedoms, and doing the things you guys are doing over there. I can't imagine the mental game that came with that. When you got out and you came back home, which is one of the most tragic welcome homes in the history of the military, what was that like? Well, you go through a debriefing, and basically it's a lot of shots. You see a psych for a bunch of days. And I guess the most astonishing story that I could maybe pose to anyone is the last words I heard was, grow your hair out, get a job, and don't ever tell anybody you were there. Those were the exact, and I never forget that. Yeah. Here's what's funny, John, is not much has changed, and here's what I mean. I didn't get the nastiness that you got, but when I got my first real corporate job, working in a corporate skyrise, which was my dream, to wear a suit to work, the whole 9 yards. I had a vice president of a multi-million-dollar, almost $100 million company tell me two things. He said, Donnie, don't tell people you're a veteran and lose your country accent. And here's why, is being a veteran in the civilian community means jack shit. It will not help you with your career. It will not help you, advance. They don't think you have skill sets, and they don't know how to work with you. So, which is tragic. It took me 10 years after I got out, and, you're talking, I got out in 1999, 30 years past, the Vietnam War, and I'm still not telling people I'm a damn veteran.
Yeah.
No, it's crazy. So when you got out, and what was that transition like? I'm really trying to bring awareness to a lot of these veterans that are transitioning out and the hell they're going through trying to go from that world to civilian life. Did you grow your hair out? Did you, go that route and find a job? What happened?
I got out right away, checked in with the VA to be told there's nothing wrong with me. There's no care they'll be giving me. Get a job, and I should get insurance and care from there. And that is how the VA left me at that time. Yet I was told to check in there, And again, you had maybe an hour meeting. When you left the meeting, they took your name down, gave you all that, and says, there's nothing we can do for you. You don't need anything. Just go out. So I ended up getting a job. I grew up, born and raised in Chicago. I put in for all the different unions, and I was accepted into the pipe fitter welders union out of Chicago, local 597. And I spent until I was 60 plus years old working out of that union.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I felt construction was where I needed to go because I was used to going. I knew I'd be in different places, constantly around different people, and it was hard for me to become somebody's personal friend. And all my construction life, we just never really had families we could go do stuff with and all that. Later in life, as our kids got older, we had one couple we finally would take a couple vacations with, but it seemed like, I'm sure many vets, you want to do things just with your wife and just with your family. You don't mind being around people at times, but the majority is I wanted to be more alone. And that was tough probably on my wife. I know it was on my wife and kids because we couldn't get in these big group things. And it was all because I felt better being just us than being with others.
In conversations with my father-in-law, I know there was a lot of, you don't make friends for too long because you don't know if they'll stick around. You don't get too planted because things are going to change. He was a garbage truck driver for 30 years. And I think a lot of guys, whenever they come back, they go into these kind of rough, tumbling type jobs to find a place where they're not so rank and file, but are still working with your hands. Is that why you think you really went into the pipe fitting type job, or?
Well, I didn't know what union would accept me. I applied for plumbers, pipe fitters, boilermakers, iron workers, carpenters, and I figured, and as you see, I guess they were all with their hands and all movable.
Yeah.
I just felt from what little I heard in researching work, it would be my best fit. I needed to be busy. I needed to work hard. I needed to keep my mind busy. That was my mindset. And I know I needed to have a wife. I actually, when the time came, told my mother I was going wife shopping. As bad as that may sound, that was what I told her. I knew I needed somebody by my side to control me.
John, if you were to say you went wife shopping now, somebody's going to think you went and got a Russian bride.
Oh, I understand. Different back in the 60s.
Absolutely. So okay, that's fun. When you say you went wife shopping, what did you do? Did you go to the local church, go to the local bar? I mean, did you walk down the street and go chic cute? I mean,
no. Back in again, I got out in 68, so 69. What was the big thing at that time was the dance clubs. And you went there and people would be dancing and there'd be, if you wanted to drink, you got a drink. You didn't, you drank water or pop. So I would just go there. I would look around and just try to mingle and meet someone. And actually, I did. That is not where I met my wife. So, but that was my mindset at that time. So, and I was out, and I would date a girl a couple times and try to see if it would be somebody compatible. I knew my nature was very, at that time, strong and hard to deal with in a way. So they had to be able to accept me how I was also, as well as me knowing that they could accept me and that, I felt they would be a good mother. So I just couldn't tie it with anybody. So
right, no, I get that. How many years were you how many years have you been married?
Been married 48 years.
48 years. That is a long time to put up with somebody else's dirty laundry.
And she has done so. She's an angel. And again, I described that in my book. There's a lot of details about my life in that book. When I got out of Vietnam, what I went through with the veterans to finally start getting care. And I am now in later life for my multiple injuries. I've been battling for 9.5 years. I'm going back trying to get my Purple Hearts because when I refused treatment, they've been telling me for 9.5 years, when I refused treatment, I basically said I wasn't really injured. And when I call up to St. Louis is where all the records are, and they're reading everything about it to you over the phone, and I says, where'd you read that injury about all my injuries? It's from your medical records, your personal records. I says, yet you're refusing now to give me my Purple Hearts, yet it's all in the records. Because I said I didn't want my mother to know it would kill her, that I can't go back and get it. So I'm fighting them for 9.5 years to recover those. And the logic, and I've got x-rays from the VA showing shrapnel still in my right hip. The shrapnel's still there. I've got the scars on my body from the old wounds. It's so ridiculous and stupid, and all they do is try to wear you down.
Let me ask, John, why are you fighting so hard to get the Purple Hearts? I mean, you obviously, warrant them, but what will the Purple Hearts do for you?
My grandchildren asked for.
Fair enough. It's amazing to me that a guy at 20 years old can raise his hand and say, I'm going to defend this country. And then because you refuse, treatment for your own reasons, doesn't mean you still get hurt. Are all these wounds, are they undocumented at all? There's just no documentation of you actually being hurt?
There's not only documentation read from me over the phone from the St. Louis, that's where the records are kept for the military, for the Navy and the Marines, read to me over the phone about my injuries and that I refused the treatment. I have the x-ray showing the shrapnel. I have a letter from another Marine verifying I was injured. To go back and recover a Purple Heart, there's a procedure. I got that letter of procedure. I followed that letter of procedure. It's about 12 items. I fulfilled every item but one. And the one item that I have not fulfilled is that I needed to have a letter from an officer verifying I was injured. I was an NCO, non-commissioned officer. I was a corporal. Also found out while I was there, I was promoted to sergeant, and that's another battle I've had with the VA all these years. I'm trying to get my stripes. And again, it's detailed in my book. 2 weeks after I got into country, I was assigned to what's called a reactionary squad. We were there to protect an artillery outfit. The artillery outfit follows the infantry. So every few days, every few weeks, when the infantry moves, the artillery's there as their support. I was there with a 5-mile radius to protect that artillery outfit who was getting sniped at, mortared constantly because they needed to take them out. But that was my goal. That was my duty. 2 weeks after I was there, the lieutenant in charge of that 44-person Marine reactionary squad was killed. I was the senior person on hand at that time. Those men were turned over under my control. I was then to put up and take them everywhere we went, on every mission, lay it out, line it up, set up the patrols, day patrols, night patrols, LPs. That was my duty. They were going to constantly replace me with an officer. Until the day I left, it was just maybe a week before I left, they finally, 3 tours later, got a lieutenant to come in and take my place, as they told me I had to leave. Because after my third injury, that was the one thing in Vietnam. Third injury, still alive, you have to leave. So they basically told me I was going. So they finally put a lieutenant in control again. I ran that outfit, and that's my battle with them. I was the officer. You may call me an NCO, but I was the officer. So When I signed this stuff, there was nobody above me. I reported to the captain of the artillery outfit when I needed more men. I would let him know I needed more men to replace for death or injury. So it is so, again, I'm going to say asinine because, again, it's just how is this affecting them? I've got the letters from the vets. I got the VA with the shrapnel in my body. I've got the scars on my body verifying that these are 40-year-old scars, wounds. And these are from the chief of surgery in the VA hospital, Hang&nbsp out of Chicago. Everything they needed plus beyond. Photos. It just, I don't know what it's about, but it's a battle. And all they do is stress your PTSD more. You relive this over and over again.
I just want to make sure everybody caught that. So for 3 tours as an E4, you ran an entire platoon in an officer's billet in wartime.
44 Marines.
God bless. Good on you, brother. Wow. What about the captain? I'm just curious. Even though you reported to him, there's no access to him?
I have no way. They asked me to find him. How would I even know if he's alive? He was probably 40 years old at that time. I would have no way where he would live. I've asked for copies of records. They refused to give them to me because, that's not me. They'll give you your own records, not someone else's records.
Absolutely.
And to try to Google his name, nothing comes up. But also, I don't know how it is in the wars today, but back in Vietnam, captain only stayed no more than 6 months. They rotated him out because a lot of them got threatened by their own people because of the shit just got so intense and things sometimes that came out of their mouth when they're dealing with a vet who's been in country 11, 12, 14, 18, 20 months, and he's going to come and try to tell you to do something. The mindset is different. Rank doesn't always step hold and be number one, depending on the person.
Right. Well, and that happens quite often. Wow. So you're battling the VA, taking them head on, which is just, and I'll use your word again, asinine, because at the end of the day, the VA does not give a shit about the military. I don't care what they say. It's still the worst medical service in the world, trying to take care of our vets. Their customer service, kindness, any of that stuff is thrown out the window with those people. And what sucks is some of the people inside the VA are really good, genuine people and are really trying to help. But they're so understaffed. They're so ill-trained that they're constantly overwhelmed. And that's what happens anytime you have the government run any damn thing. Wow. So now you're in this 9.5-year battle with the VA, trying to get your Purple Hearts, trying to get your meritorious promotion to sergeant, and all the while you've been living because this is even back before they even diagnosed PTSD. I mean, they didn't have any clue what was going on with you guys. The PTSD wasn't even a label at that point. You guys were basically sent out the door and told to, suck it up, buttercup, and just deal with it. And you go out into a world where you can't even talk about being a veteran, being a Marine, and damn sure don't mention Vietnam War. I'm just curious because a lot of guys turn to substances, alcohol, things along those lines. Did you hit any of those dark patches along the way?
Unfortunately, or fortunately, no. I never got into drinking or drugs. I got a wife quick and a family quick after, and that to me is what kept me away from it. And I was looking for success. I tried to bury, as they told me when I got out, don't mention it, but I tried to bury it away. All I focused on was my job in construction, trying to get promoted to do better for my family, trying to become a foreman, a general foreman, a superintendent. And I was able to move myself up, which meant, and each time as I got moved up, it was more hours, more time at home when you got home. So I was able to stay away from that stuff. But many of the vets got into the drinking, got into the drugs, and so many committed suicide or ruined their lives over it. And I seen that so many construction workers were veterans and Vietnam veterans, and they were gone within years. They were just ate away from, the drinking or drugged themselves up or they killed themselves. And even later in life, as the PTSD started hitting some, I've got two friends who are Vietnam vets, both blew their brains out.
Yeah.
Later in their 60, hit 61, 62, finally going to retire, and then put the 45 to the head. And that is.
Yeah, I had another Marine on the show, Robert Caudill, and he tells a story during his episode that he's lost more friends after being out and being home from all the recent wars than he did the entire time he was in. Yeah.
Mine is a little different. We had him die afterwards, but where I was and how I was, there was a lot of death, a lot of major injury around me. Again, I don't mean to plug my book, but it's going to detail a lot of combat missions, a lot of death. Maybe some won't want to read it, but I hope they would because, and I don't care if you're a veteran, a family of a veteran or not, there's so much in there for the younger generation to know about the older generation, whether it's their grandfather, their neighbors, their friends. They need to learn, and the parents, which are our kids, they need to learn about what we went through because we've kept it quiet our whole life. Mm-hmm. My wife and kids didn't know about none of this until about 4 months before I wrote the book. They just knew Dad had scars. They knew Dad was tense. They knew Dad would get in a fist fight in a blink of an eye. While I didn't drink, someone come near my kids or family, I was in their face and nothing stopped me. And that was a problem I lived with my rage. So while I didn't have the drinking problem, I didn't have the drug problem. I had a rage problem my whole life. A lot of fights.
Yeah.
So that was maybe the part that got me, the part that accepted it to me. But so they've lived through a lot, and if someone asked my wife, and I've told this to many people, as we were growing, my wife said many a time she ran and hid in the closet because of how I was in the middle of the night reliving things with the flashbacks, whatever you want to call them. I call them horror, not a flashback, but I'd be up in the middle, like screaming and yelling. She was so scared she'd run and hide in the closet, thinking that, not knowing I would hurt her. So she put that up with her whole life. Those kind of things are under control. While, now I don't sleep a lot, but I sleep better than I did at times.
Right. Well, and here's what sucks is the VA still doesn't understand how to deal with this PTSD. I had two Army E4 sergeants, I believe. I don't know the Army ranks really well, but two guys on Alex Fenner and Chad Davenport. And Chad telling the story of, I believe it was Chad, that the VA had him on 18 pills a day trying to treat PTSD, basically in pain, that he was literally in a drug-induced coma because he could not function with all the medications they had on him.
If you would take everything they prescribed, you would be comatose. Fortunately, the psychiatrist, I'm required to see him for the rest of my life, or they lock me up. They don't hesitate to retell me that. This guy controls it well. He wants it so you're still, let's say, have a focus about yourself and you can go on with life. He doesn't want to put you where you're walking around days. So he monitors the dose constantly. He takes blood tests to track it all so that you're not changing your system. So I give him a lot of great credit for that. He's really gone deep. And as you mentioned about the VA, there's a lot of good doctors, nurses out there and all these hospitals. The battle isn't with the doctors and nurses. It's with the corporate. And what I learned is that 90% of the people I'm writing these letters to never even served in service, let alone a combat zone. So when I'm writing something, they don't understand. How could they understand what you're trying to say to them if they've never been there themselves?
Absolutely.
And that'd be like, a common person going to someone at a nuclear powerhouse and trying to hold a conversation with them. You're going nowhere. Right.
It's crazy. And my father-in-law was big in the VFWs, and I just couldn't go to them. I mean, one, there was such a generational gap, but the Vietnam veteran guys, y'all are a tough, rough bunch of guys, because you guys didn't get even to the level of care and treatment that the guys are getting now.
It's a great thing that they're getting it now. That is a major plus.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's still not enough. I mean, when I've got guys that have come on the show that tell me, they were prescribed, 15, 18 pills, and they've completely walked away from them because they're in states that have legalized marijuana and stuff and doing,
illegal marijuana has solved almost all of their pain problems, their mental problems, because they have, a natural release, and people are fighting against that, legalizing that. And I don't mean to get on that soapbox, but God, let these guys fix themselves in a natural way and get away from these damn big ass farmers trying to shove pills down everybody's throats.
I don't know if you have to be on them, but if you read any of the pills, and I've been on, let's say, 10 different types, the key thing that they say for a side effect, suicide. Every one of them. The number one side effect, suicide. Why would you prescribe something for a guy going through trauma that the number one issue about it is suicide? And there are a lot of people. I am retired in Arizona now. A lot of people here have gone to the marijuana because they can drop the pills. The VA won't give it to them. They have to buy it on themselves.
Yep.
The VA will not supply them with that, even though that seems to be helping them. And I'm not into the drugs and all that, but what's going to work and keep the guy from killing himself and being able to productive life, that should be the concern.
100%.
Donnie also talked about your father-in-law with his Agent Orange cancer. In my book, and I'm going to say something again.
Please.
I have a Facebook page and a video. If you go into Facebook or into YouTube and you type in the book's title, In Thy Mother's Honor, you will, in the video, you will see me talking about my book and about Agent Orange. In my book, you'll see everything on my Facebook. It brings up so many things about the Agent Orange cancers and all that. I have had 2 cancer surgeries. Agent Orange cancer prostate. I've had my prostate totally removed, my nerves, my nodes. I'm on diapers and pads the rest of my life at this age. And I had heart cancers. When I went for my heart cancers, I was given a 20% chance of survival. I'm one of the miracle shots, as they say. I lived through that. I had 5 different heart surgeries, 12 and a half hours, all Agent Orange related.
John, but that's because you're full of piss and vinegar. I mean, dude, you sewed yourself up in combat. I mean, come on. It's going to take more than a cancer to take your ass out. You're just a tough hombre.
Full respect for that. Different time, different mindset when that happened. Today, I don't, but you're, like I say, you're in your own zone when you're in combat. You need to be to survive. The goal when you get there is to make it home. We were picked on for supposedly have done so many things that nobody ever did, but your goal is to make it home. And each day you do that day to get home, or you won't make it home. And some still didn't have the choice. They made it home in the box because it just didn't work out for them. But that is your goal. Every day is a day.
Absolutely.
But orange cancers is another thing overlooked on the Vietnam vets.
100%.
There are 20-some thousand veterans from Agent Orange going through surgeries and death a year from Agent Orange cancers. You don't ever hear that on the TV. You don't ever hear that on the radio. It is kept quiet. And what most people don't know, in 1993, there was a settlement for the Agent Orange cancer vets, filed a private lawsuit. And you can look all this up on the internet or Agent Orange lawsuit. So I'm not making and all that's in there. Look up Agent Orange Cancer's lawsuit for the Vietnam veterans. They were awarded hundreds of millions of dollars. And our government at that time stepped in, never were involved in this lawsuit. And it was a pain and suffering award. Pain and suffering award for all the cancers they were going through and they're going to go through. Our government stepped in, took every dollar. 6 months later, could not verify where the money was anymore. Could not even tell where they put the money. And all they stated was, if you have an Agent Orange related cancer, we will care for that issue for the rest of your life. You know what? We signed up in the military. Anything that happened to us, they had to care for the rest of our life. So that was bullshit. They took our money and, again, went to build more things that didn't need to be built, went for more bonuses or more committees and meetings so they can make more money. That was a private settlement, a private award, and it was pain and suffering. And if you think the cancers don't hurt you, I've got 3 different more cancers I'm dealing with from the Agent Orange. And you take what you need to take for that, and you work through all that. I try to walk every day. I try to lift weights. At this age and what you've gone through, it's not like when you're in your 20s. But you do what you can. to make yourself mobile.
Well, and just so people understand how nasty Agent Orange is, my father-in-law's scars, I mean, we always joked with him that he might as well just get a zipper, the pole portion of a zipper tattooed on his chest, because he had a scar that ran from the base of his throat down past his belly button with about a 1-inch gap in between the two different surgeries. So between his colon cancer and his, heart attacks, they completely had opened up every portion of his, and as he went later in life, it was finally COPD. Now, granted, he was a heavy smoker, smoked his ass off more than he ever should, and so it was a combination of cigarettes and, Agent Orange that killed him. But that Agent Orange is just nasty. Now, you've got the other issues. You've got the Camp Lejeune water issue, where there's guys that have come out with all the crazy cancers and everything else from the Camp Lejeune water. Then you've got the guys coming back from the sandbox that are dealing with all the other things that popped up, when they were over there. And I think it comes down to that, and you said it, is we signed up for them to protect us, and they really just don't give a shit about us at all.
They don't. And I'm not going to say the doctors I see at the hospitals or the nurses. They care. They want to make you better. They want to do the best they can, the majority of them. But the issue is well beyond that. Unfortunately, our politicians are not, while they're doing better, they've got so much more. Come and talk to the vets. Come and meet with a vet. Let the actual vet talk. Quit talking to the head of the hospital. Quit talking to the head of some other facility. Talk to the vets.
Well, and what's crazy is they just, passed within the last year that, if you're so many miles from a vet hospital, a veteran hospital, that you can go to an emergency room and be treated there or whatever else. Well, a lot of guys, instead of going to see the regular doctors, because they don't want to deal with the VA hospitals or whatnot, when they get sick enough, they just check themselves in the emergency room versus going to the veteran hospitals and everything else, because they know that when you go to a veteran hospital, you're going to sit in a waiting room for 4 to 5 hours before somebody sees you. And you're around all these other people who are sick and suffering. It's a miserable place. It's insane, what people go through trying to go through the VA medical system.
Well, you're talking about the choice program is what you're talking about. It was passed for the veterans.
Right.
I'm gonna give you a prime example of that. And you carry a VA card, I'm sure, like I do.
I do.
The back of the card, it states, in case of emergency, go to the nearest hospital. And if it's not a VA hospital, report in within 72 hours or 48 hours what you had done so that your bill would get paid. I was visiting my children, my oldest daughter, her husband and grandchildren in California. Had a heart issue. Went to the VA hospital, California, 58 miles away. Took 2 hours, 45 minutes to get there, California traffic. And while I was there, they treated me, told me I had a mild heart attack, and that I should watch for these signs, and that if something happened again, if I couldn't make it back there, go to the closest hospital, just like the back of my card said. The next morning, 13 miles from where my kids lived, was Cedars-Sinai Hospital in California. I was checked in. They run a test. That's what they told me. I had 5 to 10 days left to live if I didn't have surgery, and only 20% chance of surviving the surgery. We called the VA, and you have that thing where you do the secure messaging. Sent them 4 or 5 messages that I had 5 to 10 days to live if I didn't have surgery. And the hospital in the VA hospital in LA told me that all their heart patients go to Cedars-Sinai Hospital. That's where they send their heart patients. And I, without knowing that, that's where I checked myself in. Anyway, with the hospital sending it, phone calls recorded, my messages, my secure messages, I had to opt to have the surgery 3 days later. Not one response from the VA. In writing, I've got as part of my records, I think it's like 17 secured messages. The hospital has 10 or 12 phone calls recorded that they called them and nobody would take their calls, all saying, this man is here, he's dying. If we don't do the surgery, he's going to be dead in a day or two. So they did all the surgeries, did all those surgeries on me. Those surgeries were done February 1st of 2016. I was in intensive care for a long, long time because I had my ascending thoracic aorta, which is the big vein at the top of your heart, replaced with a hose. Your aortic valve was rebuilt. My mitral valve and pedestal was rebuilt, and I had a double bypass. 12.5-hour surgery, 7-hour break, 7.5 more hours of surgery, 5 surgeons. With my whole stay, my bill was $1,789,000. The VA has not paid that bill to date. I am still here waiting for that, and that's one of the I am waitings. That's one of the many I am waiting, and that's why I chose it. They have not paid the bill, and their logic why they have not paid the bill, I didn't follow procedure. That I went to a private hospital, I said, wait a minute, the back of my card, emergency, basically states the closest hospital. I was at the hospital the day before at the VA. They told me that's where they send the heart patients. This was a heart thing. I called you to get verified that I was there to make sure you could approve the bill. I secure message you. I secure message the surgeon that I had seen, the heart surgeon in Tucson, Arizona, who I had seen prior to going. Anyway, all that is in my book, as well as all the I am waiting. So I've got, again, PTSD issue. I've now got a $1,789,000 bill over my head. I'm retired, 73 years old, living off Social Security and some money from the vets. And I've got to deal with this and think about this, besides all my cancers to deal with and everything else to deal with.
John, I'm so glad you're sharing this story on my show, because people need to hear this shit of the ridiculousness of how all this plays out. Because I don't think people really grasp the nature of how bad the VA medical system really, really, really is. I look at it this way, is we all signed up to defend our country. Majority of the civilian population respects us, embraces us, but nobody's taking care of the veterans like they should be, especially in the medical realm, the mental and physical. Somebody's got to up their game to take better care of these guys. I mean, I'm a healthy dude. I didn't get hurt that bad when I was in, but as I get older, I'm sure things are going to happen. And they're going to come back up for the years I was in the Marine Corps. Things are going to spring up, the further I go in life. And I will continue to go to civilian doctors, and I will continue to pay for my own medical care that's completely not affordable, because I'm not going to put myself through the VA system. And what sucks about that is me going through the civilian sector keeps them not fixing the VA system, because I'm putting all the money I could be towards the VA, I'm putting towards the civilian world. So God love you, brother, for taking on the fight like you have and sharing your story. So let's talk about the book a little bit more, because I think people really need to go read this thing. So how long did it take you to write this book?
It took about 6 months to write the book. The book is not that big. The time it took to write it is because as I would hit a certain issue I was writing about, I had to stop writing for 3 or 4 days. I couldn't go back and sit there and continue on. And I literally physically needed a mental break from what I was trying to write. And, because I would write, let's say, what turned out to be 4 or 5 pages, and then I would proofread it to correct my spelling and all that, because I'm not good on computers and I don't know how to do that fixing thing, how to correct the spelling, so I would do it manually myself. And then whatever it was after I wrote it and then reread it, depending on the point of the story I was trying to put out, I needed to be away from the story. I couldn't write any more about it. So it took 6 months to me, what could have probably been done in 3 weeks if I was a person who wrote books. But we're writing a life story. We're not writing a fiction or novel or
right.
People need to read everything. But my book is In Thy Mother's Honor. I explained a little bit about that. My pen name is I Am Waiting. It can be bought right from the publisher at 800-788-7654, or you can get it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. From both of them, you have to order it just like you do the publisher. I'm not no big, well-known publisher, so my books aren't in the stores. I've learned it doesn't work that way. You struggle to get your message out. So I'm hoping.
And John, just so you know, nobody goes to a bookstore anymore anyways. So you're better off doing everything online with everything. And we'll make sure we put links in the show notes for this, for your book, so people can actually go straight from the podcast and go straight and purchase your books if they're so inclined. Do you have any pictures in the books?
In the back of the book, there's pictures of a Jeep I was in that's destroyed, a truck I was in. These all relate to my injuries.
Right, right.
And then an open field, what's left of what would have been a fire base. And I would prefer not to go into what each of those pictures relate to an injury I'm going to describe in the book.
That's fine. That's fine. The only reason I asked about
and also relates to the Purple Heart. I'm trying to chase for that.
Right. And the only reason I asked about the pictures is a lot of times during those stories that I've read, because I've read quite a few Vietnam books, it just puts you more in the story when you see the pictures on the back end.
In the back end, there's even copies of a letter from the Marine who wrote stating that these things happened to me. There's copies of my sergeant promotion showing I was promoted. And these are all from the records of the VA that I had to go get and then send back to them, which is another silly process. But that's all in the back.
And in truth, in life, this is how it always is. It doesn't matter what you're doing. They always hope that you'll quit fighting so they don't have to honor it. So I'll tell you to stay the course. They want to make it difficult so you'll give up in the fight. Well, brother, I don't think you have any give up in you. I think you've been fighting your entire life. You got quite a long ways to go to keep pecking at them. So
I haven't given up yet, and I'm hoping this message gets out to someone who will take the time to read the book, read the story. And my whole goal is maybe you're not the person who could help step in for many vets or in some of my cases, but maybe you know somebody who can, and it could step on behalf of the Agent Orange for all the veterans suffering with that, or maybe help know somebody who knows someone else who says, hey, I can go in and I can walk right into that VA office and get this settled for this guy with his promotion and get him his old Purple Hearts. And to me, unfortunately, in this world, it's who you know. It's a sad shame being a veteran.
100% agree. John, do you think you're going to try and get yourself on stage to tell this to other audiences and actually start speaking to people about these issues?
I wouldn't know how to do that. I don't know if I could be in front of a crowd. I started doing radio stations July 1st. I was recommended to start doing it to get the message out about the book from a gentleman who is big into the industry of promoting everything, as well as he does movies. He does those miniseries on TV. I connected to him through LinkedIn, and he says, this is what you need to do to help yourself. You got to get on radio. And getting on radio shows, I'm going to be on my first TV show September 27th in Chicago, and it's a small little new station that's just coming up. I don't know who's going to see it, how much it'll get seen, but I'm giving that a try. I want to get the word out. You know, again, the people need to back this Agent Orange issue. It needs to become more focal because of the cancers are eating away at so many veterans, people. They're people that forget that they're a veteran, they're a person. And again, I'm hoping somebody might get the message who has the power or the connection to step in and help me get my promotion and my Purple Hearts.
I hope somebody listening to this can help with that as well, bud, and they can step up. I have a ton of veterans that listen to this show, but I also will tell you, John, I think there's so many fights that are taking place right now that it's going to take someone who has a hell of a lot of pull to finally take this issue and really go to task for this. It's crazy. One last time, the name of your book is what?
In Thy Mother's Honor. Thy meaning Thy.
And written by I Am Waiting. So that's the letter I, the letter M, the word waiting.
Correct.
On the book. John, I got to tell you, brother, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your journey. I really hope people embrace this story and, you know, want to rally around your mission and the things you're doing. Here's how I like to wrap up every show as we get to hear people's stories and journeys. If you were to leave my audience with a phrase, a quote, or a mantra, something they could take with them as they're going through their journey, and maybe it can help them as they're going through their own past personal battles and their own personal fights, what would be that phrase or quote or mantra maybe that you would say, you know, pull this out in time of need?
Remember, you got your family by your side. Take every day as you can, each and every day, and make the best of it. And don't let anybody else change your journey.
Love that, brother. Love that. That's just awesome, man. Just awesome. John, please keep sharing your story, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really, truly appreciate you.
Thank you. Again, Tony, thank you very much. And again, to the listeners, In Thy Mother's Honor, you can go on Facebook or YouTube. You'll see actually me on YouTube. You'll see a copy of the book. In the Facebook, you'll see all kinds of stuff about the book in Agent Orange.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thank you again.
Guys, really thank you for listening to this episode. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun putting these together. I wanted to make sure before we get out of here that you knew what we were doing with social content. What we found was because of the podcast, we have a unique way of helping you get your social content out on a very easy way. What we're doing is we're interviewing people. And from that interview, we will capture a lot of information that will then be turned into videos, memes, articles, all things you can use for your social content. I know, like for me, one of the biggest struggles I had was, what do I put out there? What do I say on a regular basis? Well, we'll help do all that for you. So if this is at all of interest to you, reach out to us and let us help you grow your social media channel. I can tell you I did this for my business, and my social media is completely taking off. My Instagram, since I started doing this, jumped to over 10,000 followers, and it continues to grow. So if this is at all of interest to you, check the bottom of the show notes for the link that says, Get My Social Content Done right now.